Jackie, are we ready? Oh, go ahead. All right, with that, we would do a recall to order of a regular meeting. It is now 5:55, and we would do a recall to order of a regular meeting. Jackie, can you please start with, roll call?
Amanda Harness.
Here.
Andre Paul.
Here.
Steve Byers.
Here.
Ariel Owens. Christopher Boys.
Here.
Stacy Ramirez.
Present.
Vante Bynum.
Here. All right. Now moving on, with public participation, sorry. Thank you. All right, members of the public who wish to speak to the board should complete a request card prior to the start of the meeting. This section of the meeting will be reserved for comments from the public. All comments should be limited to 3 minutes. Criticism of individuals is not in order. To start off, we have, Mr. Cohen Barnes.
Do I talk there?
Yes, please.
Good evening. Really appreciate the opportunity to come before you and have a chance to be able to speak. My name is Cohen Barnes. I'm the mayor of DeKalb. We've had a lot of conversations over the last few weeks or month on this topic, so I'm gonna just kind of consolidate my words because I think you've all heard my thoughts on this matter overall. But I want to thank especially multiple school board members, the amount of reach out, the amount of education building, the amount of desire to really figure out how to make the best choice possible. I have to commend so many of you on that because it's tough being in your roles, and I understand that. And the seek knowledge, right, to seek to make the best informed decision, that's pretty incredible, and I have a high amount of respect for so many of you and how you've leaned in, and leaned in hard with all the other taxing bodies on this particular topic. What I want to talk about today is ultimately what I believe, and I think many others do. We are in a time of unprecedented historic economic development. What we're seeing on the south side of town is quite frankly staggering. The community hasn't seen this since the invention of barbed wire. And that unprecedented historic economic development really challenges a lot of us in our roles. And I like to look at it as it's a philosophy of governing, essentially. My desire is I want to create as much economic development as possible, and I want every taxing body to benefit from it. I want all our levies to rise, because I have trust in all the representatives that are elected to these positions that they're going to have that fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayer, and we're going to do what's best. And ultimately, we're going to take those extra dollars and we're going to create better services for you all, it's better services for the youth of our community, which is phenomenal. For us, it could be fire stations, it could be police stations. But ultimately, I want us all to benefit from the economic development that's happening. But that philosophy in governing, the difference, which I think has been the root of the spirit of the conversation, or the spirited conversation that we've been having, is where does the taxpayer fit in on that? The city of DeKalb, DeKalb Public Library, Kishwaukee Water Reclamation District, all of us have already decided we're holding the taxpayer harmless while our levies increase. My understanding, the challenge for you all that was given by the school board is how can we hold the taxpayer harmless? At least let's look at that. When I do the back of the napkin math, and I'm sure Amir will correct me, wherever Amir is, he'll correct me on it, but it's a $9 million increase in your property tax levy, rounding up a little bit. That's an incredible amount of money that you can do an incredible amount of good with. And no one's asking you to take less than that necessarily. What I think a lot of people are looking at is, can you just make sure that all of us, our properties went up 9.53%? It's a staggering amount of money. How can you all benefit from this unprecedented historic economic development, increased levies, but make sure that all of us that have lived here, supported the school district many times in the past with new schools, new initiatives, how can you make sure that you hold us harmless so we benefit as well from this economic development activity that's going on?
Thank you.
So I challenge you, try and hold the taxpayer harmless. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, next up, William Haynes. I apologize if I butchered your last name.
Heinisch.
Heinisch, I apologize. Thank you.
German.
Good evening, city or school board. I've got to remember which board I'm in front of. I've sit on so many, but William Heinisch, a local businessman, property owner. I sit on as a board member of Opportunity DeKalb, the DeKalb Area Rental Association as well. 9 years ago, I was part of a group that was called Focus, Fostering Our Community's United Success, and I see some of those members here tonight. 9 years ago, we were working actually against the city because the city was business unfriendly. The city was high taxes, the school is high taxes, and we determined the only way was to make the city business friendly and grow our way out of it. We needed the growth to reduce taxes. And through efforts of our group, we are now starting to see those right now, finally, after 8, 9 years. Who's seen the Wendy's commercial? And I'm gonna date myself, where she goes, "Where's the beef? Where's the beef? You had the sandwich, and it was, where's the beef?" You know, it's a lot of things come down to where's the beef. And so that's why I put together this sheet that I did on myself, because I could not find where you could condense all the information into a solid piece of paper. You'll see a lot of presentations and a lot of numbers, and to me, it's all lettuce, tomato, ham, and cheese. It's not the beef. And what do I mean by that? The 9.53 equalization raise that this township did, that's hot air. All the abatements that the school district gives and the city gives, it's all hot air. $150,000 value of a house, it's $222,000 by Zillow right now. It's all hot air, it doesn't matter. What matters? What's the beef? The beef is the windfall and additional property tax growth that we've had from all the once-in-a-lifetime development south of 88. And that's where you can see it, you can touch it, you can feel it. All these other things, you can't see, feel, touch. They're hot air. So when we talk, and even the rate, when we talk about rates, it's hot air. You have to focus on dollars collected. So if you follow on the sheet I gave out, I tried to break this down so that the common person can understand it. 99.9% of people do not understand how things are figured out. And I tried to break it down and simplify it in a one sheet so people understand, and also try and go through it briefly. If you look at number one, that's where the school district has proposed the rate. The hold harmless rate, which is item number 4 below it, is about 5.49, 5.5. You know, some of these numbers are so big I had to turn my iPhone sideways because I couldn't get enough numbers. Now luckily I did go to DeKalb school, and I learned that if you drop the last 3 numbers, you could still multiply it out and come up with the same number. You just going over.
Well, thank you. The 3 minutes are up, and we do have a list. If we could ask you to
Okay.
wrap it up, please.
I will wrap it up. So what I'm asking is, and the numbers balance out, that I ask to hold the taxpayer harmless, a 5.49, 5.5 tax rate, say no to the 5.98 proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Chuck Shepherd.
I prepared kind of a little bit long, and I'll just really go abbreviate because we seem to be all talking the same stuff. But Chuck Shepherd, I'm over at Shepherd Construction, building owner, long time. I'm also representing the Builders Association as an officer, Public Building Commission member, who we oversee all the building construction, ongoing maintenance for all the county buildings. Today, we are experiencing a windfall of tax revenues due to the properties south of the tollway. I would ask you tonight to please reduce your rate, because we don't want to kill the golden goose that we've been all looking forward to. I've been in this market for 50 years, and we need to look ahead so that we continue to have that development by the big corporations on the south side of town.
Thank you. Christy Krupp. And again, I apologize if I butchered your last name.
That was good. My name is Christy Krupp. I'm a resident of DeKalb. I'm a business owner. I'm a board member at the Barb City Manor, which is a low-income retirement center. Thank you all for serving on this board. I know it's often a thankless job, but it's very important. You would control the biggest amount of money or portion of our real estate taxes. When the tax base leaves, you have less tax money to utilize. When you overly tax your tax base, they leave if they can. Some of us can't leave because we are rooted in this town, city, district, or generations. But those that have or can have been doing so for the past decade at an alarming rate. Illinois is has the highest percentage of population leaving consistently over the last decade, second only to New York. When your tax base leaves, you're not gonna have the money. And any increase, I would agree with Mayor Cohen and everybody that's spoken. I'm encouraging you to vote no for any sort of tax levy that hold the citizens harmless. When you agreed to take this position, the only oath you guys swore to was to the taxpayers. You did not swear an oath of allegiance to even the students or the teachers union. You swore an oath, you signed it, and it was to the taxpayers. That oath was genius, whoever designed that, because it shows an understanding that the people who are the best barometer for the community are the ones that have some skin in the game. They've either decided to buy a home here, send their children to the schools, run a business here, continue farming here, or investment property. That is and they want DeKalb to prosper and grow. And while I am so excited, and my family is excited for the massive development that has gone on the south side of town, it hasn't affected me. I'm a real estate attorney. Most of my professional contacts in that industry tell me time and time again, they're showing people who are coming to work for Facebook and Ferrara. And those people are not choosing to live here. And the reason they're not choosing to live here is because of the report cards of this district. More money into it is not the problem. I'll wrap up here.
Thank you.
If you vote to approve this tax increase, you are turning your back on the taxpayers. And you're turning your back on the one oath that you took. The needs here are different methods of teaching, perhaps mentorship, parental involvement, and discipline, and those don't necessarily require exorbitant spending. So I'm encouraging you to, again, hold the residents harmless.
Thank you. Next up, Jim Mason.
I yield my time to Christie. Would you like to pontificate, Christie?
No, but I think you should yield it back to Will, because I think you have.
That was my next choice. Do you want to say anything else?
Is he here or not? No?
Yep.
Okay. Dwayne Brown?
No, ma'am, I
Can
want
I
to yield
just
my time to Will.
finish up 2 points quick? Thank you. Just 2 other quick points I wanted to make. Is this growth that we're having is sugar. We're having more of this. There's 1,500 workers coming out there every day. The day you see those 1,500 workers not come, it's still gonna keep raising the EAV for another year or 2 as those buildings come along. And that's a point that I forgot to point out, is this is just the start of a long-term growth strategy. And those buildings were just partially assessed, so there's more of this coming. So just keep that in the back of your mind. We don't have to take the big bite of the apple now. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and now Mr. Dwayne Brown.
Dwayne Brown. Even if the property tax levy rate is lowered from 5.98% to 5.49%, that is still a 13% increase over 2022. EAV growth in 2023 is 26% higher than 2022. The district says a homeowner with a $150,000 property might expect to pay $439 more than their 2023 property tax bill. The average home in the district is well over $200,000. The funding for the new $133 million school on Normal Road is a waste of taxpayer money. We had a businessman offer a school to the district and they turned it down for that. The EAV should be lowered to a rate where homeowners pay no additional taxes over the 2022 amount. District 428 has $70 million in reserve they can use for its wasteful spending. District 428 has received a windfall in the tax revenue from companies such as Meta, Amazon, Veranda, Syngenta, 3M, Target, and others. It's time to take the tax burden off the homeowners. The school board should concentrate on other issues such as chronic truancy. District 428 has a rate of over 31% chronic truancy. The 2022 National Report Card showed that only 26% of eighth graders were proficient in math and only 31% were proficient in reading. I think you should concentrate on other things other than increasing the tax for the property owners in DeKalb. Thank you.
Art Sherbak?
I want to point out something briefly as I watched the meeting from 2 weeks ago where I believe this board was misguided by the superintendent and also the individual in charge of finance when it had implied that you guys voted in favor of increasing the tax or doing the tax levy. That did not happen. You voted to put what they call the black box, the truth in taxation. That was, some board members were questioning that particular thing. So I'm a little bit appalled that the superintendent implied that a couple weeks ago at the meeting. You did not approve the tax increase. It has to go to the public hearing. After the public hearing, then you approve the tax levy. There's 20 days required according to Illinois state statute. This particular board at the last meeting ahead of this levy was already approving things like travel so our superintendent can go on a couple trips in February. So much waste in this budget, additional hiring. You guys went on a hiring spree, going ahead and approving all these new hires before the levy was even approved. Now I'm gonna echo what Will said because I probably don't need to repeat the figures that he put forth, but the problem is, we've been told nonstop by the politicians that all this wonderful economic development, which I'm thrilled we're having on the south side of town, would result in a lowering of the amount of dollars we pay in taxes. In fact, State Rep Kiker told me that in an email a couple of years ago. We're not seeing this. This development seems to have the opposite effect, where taxing bodies are consuming all this extra revenue and not giving it back to the taxpayers. We were promised tax relief. There's all this talk about tax rates. The person who gets their tax bill is not looking at tax rates. They're looking at how much they are paying. And if this board goes ahead and approves this recommended figure of 5.89 or whatever it is, taxpayers are gonna be in for a shocker when they get their tax bill. Now, this board is not the only one doing it. The city of DeKalb is collecting 14% more in its levy, and somehow they're managing to keep the amount paid the same, but they're consuming the extra amount. You guys are attempting to collect at least 20%. The black box ad implied you were gonna collect 33% more. So this board, going forward with an incredible tax increase like this, is not doing the residents any good. It's gonna scare people away from moving into the neighborhood, and it must be stopped. As I agree with Will, we need to keep the taxpayer even as far as what we paid last year. Thank you.
David Heading?
Hello, my name is David Hedin, Swedish, not German. And I came to DeKalb in 1986, so I've been here for 37 years. I've had children and grandchildren go to DeKalb schools. They, by and large, we think they were positive experiences. My youngest grandson is now a junior in high school. He was a member of the varsity soccer team, which is the most important thing to him. My comment is that I don't know as much about the school district budget as probably everybody else in this room. I only know what I read in the paper. I do know that there's a new school going in on Normal Road. And I don't know how that school design was done. I don't know who decided on the cost of that school. I know in my professional life, I had governing agencies, when we were doing complicated and expensive projects, they would tell us our budget beforehand, and we then had a design within that budget, including 10 to 15% contingency along the way. So in the letter I wrote to the school board a week or so ago, I listed a number of places where I thought you could save money on the new school. Now, I am not the person who should be asking these questions of the school district. The school board represents us and should be asking those questions. The new school did not go through a referendum process, so the tax holders have to rely upon the school board to ask the difficult questions. So for instance, it was decided that the new school should be 70,000 square feet. Where did that come from? The NIU property is 23,000, the new building's about 47. What if the new building was only 23,000 square feet, so you had 46,000 square feet for this new building? That's still a large school, but would that save you money? I also threw in a number of other items where property developers know more about this than I do, but it's my impression always that a two-story building is cheaper than a one-story. There's less, the foundation is smaller, there's less bulldozing. On a site whose slope is like this, there seems to be a lot of asphalt, there's a certain amount of money for landscaping. The school board should be asking the school district if they can come back with a school which is perhaps less costly so that we don't have to increase our taxes so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill Phaethon?
First of all, I'm against the amount of money that the school board wants from this community and the taxpayers. DeKalb is not a wealthy community. Most cannot afford the type of increase, the amount of money that you will be getting in what's been published. You get seniors on fixed incomes, you have low-income individuals in this community. And even if they don't own property, they are in apartments, all right? And those landlords, with the type of real estate taxes that you would be talking about, have no choice but to raise rents for those individuals. Now, I sent an email and asked for people board members to respond to me. I had 2 responses. One just sent me a letter. I don't know if she was representing everybody or just herself, but I disagreed with some of the information that was in that letter. She commented that duty to provide revenues, one thing she said is the duty to provide revenues to adequately fund the district. She made that comment. Well, I think based on the amount of money you want to spend, I think we have a different understanding than adequately. Talked about a windfall, all right? Stated that we feel, as being admitted from the mayor's pushback, is that the growth does not equate to a current windfall of dollars for the district. You're receiving revenue you weren't receiving before from all these developments and from the increase in property values. I don't know how you can justify increasing by the amount that you're proposing. I question the statement that bringing those companies into our area is driving up property values. The large increase in property values is due to a lack of workers in the trades and a lack of housing inventory, high interest rates. Bringing more residents into DeKalb I haven't seen it yet. And why aren't they coming to DeKalb? For the same reason that some of these speakers have talked about, because people are leaving because of our reputation at this point.
How about 10 seconds, sir?
Pardon me?
We have about 10 seconds.
Okay. What residents do understand, dollars and cents. Are my property taxes rising or going lower? If they're rising, we should have a reasonable increase, not an outrageous increase.
Thank you. Steve Irving?
Boy, I'm glad I'm on this side of the crowd instead of up there. Tough job. I'm not here to criticize, I'm just a long-term resident of DeKalb, and I am really concerned, not just with the school district's proposal, but the property taxes in general in DeKalb. They are extremely high. The board's made a decision, and I don't know if many people know this, but to build a new school. I was part of that in a certain small part, but you've done it because the one that you've selected did not require a referendum. I think the costs have gone up 35 to maybe $38 million. And really, if part of this property tax increase is to help pay for that new school, I think it's really an underhanded deal to choose that choice to build it there without a referendum and then increase the property taxes by a huge amount.
Yep.
It's basically sidestepping everybody sitting here that would have a decision, would be allowed to make a decision on how much money could be spent for that project. It's needed, there's no question about that. But the way it's being handled, and if again, your property tax increase in part is to fund that new school, to me, it's not the right way to do it. You know, look at Facebook, multi-billion-dollar project. How many kids will that put in the school district? Very few. Do you know, based on, after the revised assessment that the state gave Facebook, that it would take at least 288 new homes at a value of $225,000 to equate to the property tax increase Facebook is giving you? How many kids would 288 houses put in the school district? A ton. Look at the statistics. In the past few years, Sycamore has added several hundred new houses. You can count on your fingertips how many new homes have been built in DeKalb in the last 10 years. Why? I know several former residents of DeKalb that have moved to Sycamore, and that includes teachers in the DeKalb district. Why? I can't speak for them, but I have heard from several of them that are concerned about the condition of the school district. So what does this mean? We have no growth in new housing. The DeKalb High School was built with the assumption of a 4% increase in new housing every year and a 4% increase in the EVA for those houses. Never happened. We have diminishing average household income in DeKalb. Our average household income, I think, is less than $37,000.
How about 10 seconds left, sir?
The current property owners are carrying the load for everything here. And I'm asking the board to reevaluate the proposed tax increase. Consider an increase, a minimal increase, and if the new school is part of this deal, look at financing it for 20 or 30 years and spread it out over a long period of time. Thank you.
Sir. Tom? Tom? Tarasinski, I apologize. I apologize for butchering your last name, sir.
I hope my 3 minutes hasn't started yet.
It will start when you start speaking.
My name's Tom Krasinski. I'm a past school board member, longtime member of the Finance Advisory Committee. And all the folks that have spoken, there's a lot of facts there that are accurate and very much worth your consideration. By the way, I know your job is not easy, and I know that this tax information is somewhat, or can be somewhat complicated. But I'm gonna try and simplify all that for you. Okay? The proposed tax increase that was originally proposed was 22%. Now, there's some conversations about inflation and preparing yourself for future needs. So if I'm on the school board side, and I'm thinking about all this, and I look at our revenue increases that we've enjoyed over the last 3 years, the total revenue that this district has increased has gone up 30%. That's before this. And it's from a number of reasons, but a big part of that is the property tax relief grant. That is driving your school funding formula up considerably, right? That's gone into your revenue streams over and above the tax increases that we've enjoyed. So again, being a school board member, I'm thinking I want to protect my spend. I don't want to impact negatively the spend on my students and allowing for some growth, even though our student population hasn't increased in 5 years. Our student population has not increased in 5 years. So the new money that's being spent is not because of growth in student count. Our cost per student has gone up 15, 16, 17, we're approaching $18 million. With the new numbers, it could be higher than that. Much higher than anybody in the county, much higher than wealthy districts, such as St. Charles and others. So when you do your comparisons and you think about that, and you think about the desire to go to smaller class sizes, well, you look at those districts, they have smaller class sizes than we do, and they spend less money. So that raises some pretty serious questions about effectiveness, efficiency. Okay, so I'm gonna come back around. With a zero tax increase, now that it's in the numbers, here, there he is. Now that that's in the numbers, you still get 13% more money. That does not negatively impact any student. You're already spending enough money to bring your student counts down to 22 or 23 if you look at efficiencies and effectiveness, but 13% more money is more than enough to cover the needs of your students so that you are going to produce a better outcome for your students and still hold the harmless our homeowners. So you can do both. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity to do this. By the way, one last thing. By the way, you have enjoyed 4 property tax relief grants if that 4th one is coming through. The first one was $4.7 million in 19, and you got another $5.4 million in 22. Both of those property tax relief grant amounts are not being shared today. The first 2 are no longer being shared because they're not required. So when you put out information that said, I am driving down tax rates, those are state monies that are doing that, not the district.
Thank you,
So if
sir.
there's other questions, I'd be happy to.
Moving on to, thank you for all the commentary today. We appreciate everyone that took the time to come today. Moving on to the next subject, new business, student discipline for, let me read the actual recommendation. All right, so under new business, which is item A, student discipline for student number 113023A. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the expulsion with an advance for student number 113023A as presented. Is there a motion? So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Andre Paul,
Yes.
Steve Byers,
Yes.
Christopher Boyes,
Yes.
Stacy Ramirez,
Yes.
Nancy Bynum,
Yes.
Amanda Harder,
Yes.
Okay, item B. Okay, item B, which is student discipline for student number 113023B. It is an action item. It is recommended the Board of Education approve the expulsion with an advance for student number 113023B as presented. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Steve Byers,
Yes.
Christopher Boyce,
Yes.
Stacy Ramirez.
Yes.
Dante Bynum,
Yes.
Amanda Harness.
Yes.
Andre Paul.
Yes.
Item C, student discipline for student number 113023C. This is an action item. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the expulsion for student 113023C as presented. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Christopher Boyce,
Yes.
Stacy Ramirez,
Yes.
Dante Bynum,
Yes.
Amanda Harness.
Yes.
Andre Paul,
Yes.
Steve Byers.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to now what we're here for, which is the presentation. Item A, which is the tax levy discussion. And that is going to be brought forth by Mr. Amir Dota.
Thank you. We're coming to the board as a follow-up to a conversation from our tax rate request that we provided in November 14 meeting. So for 2 years, the district has abated and provided taxpayer relief. We have gone down from 6.8% tax rate to 5.9% tax rate recommended on the meeting. That has translated to about $250 of lower tax bills for those past 2 years. We have incredible growth in our district boundaries. Industrial section is exploding, and with developments, houses are selling at a much higher value. And with this incredible growth, market value of homes have gone up. With this growth, the assessed value of homes have also gone up. That's important to note because that's where the tax is based from. When the tax base grows, even a lower rate of taxes from the district may not be enough to translate to lower tax bills for taxpayers. At the November 14th meeting, I recommended a tax rate which is a lower rate from the previous year. I also presented that for the past 2 years, we have absorbed rising cost of goods. Even though we can only recover about 5%, the inflation was much higher for the past 2 years. We have absorbed these inflationary prices, and we are paying at a much higher cost. The district can only go up by CPI or by CPI or 5%, whichever is lower, or by new growth. So in our recommendation, we shared that we are going to abate a total of $15 million. That is a relief to taxpayers. We do have increase in fixed costs, and we have rising contractual expenses that surpasses the inflation that we are recovering from this tax rate. Let's also remember that by USD, we are 84% adequacy, financial adequacy, so which means we're far below the 100% model that we would like to be. So one thing we want to share is any type of under levy is a permanent reduction to our revenue that is unable for us to be recaptured in the future. So also something to stress is that we work very well with city and county to provide incentives to local taxpayers, from TIF to E-zone abatements to even direct abatements with companies. We have provided many forms of incentives for the commercial and industrial growth. We are committed to being part of the solution, and we want to improve the quality of life for all citizens by working collaboratively with the county and, of course, with the city. But we have to think, but our priority is ensuring we can adequately and responsibly fund the cost of operating our schools so that we provide the services that the parents, that the taxpayers have requested from us. Whenever we bring these recommendations, the requests for taxpayers, we always think about, can we competitively pay our teachers, our staff, and also retain them? Can we provide robust and holistic programming for our students? Can we plan for growth? Can we sustain the revenues? And then ultimately, are we in line with all the factors that affects our rising cost? We are in good standing, and that is because of disciplined efforts from this financial stewardship from previous years to now. And we tend to stay in the same trajectory. Okay, so these are the recommendations. These are a few options that we have provided. How we project our recommended levy rate this year is the same as we've done the previous years. It doesn't change this year. The only change is that even though we're lowering our tax rate, the assessment rate of the houses or of the properties have gone up. This is that increased EAV that we keep talking about. Even with the assessed value going up and lowering our tax rate may not necessarily equate to an increase, to a decrease in the tax bills. Our primary revenue stream is residential property taxes, as is the case with all districts in Illinois and by design of the state. We do not collect fees, tickets, or any other revenue streams that ensures sustainability for us. We can only rely on the local taxpayers, state funded streams of funds, and federal streams of funds. Continued economic growth in the area and the loss of property tax relief grant from the state may not be able to afford us to make further abatements in future years. So if we hit permanently our revenue currently, we have to be able to sustain these type of tax rates and tax abatements in the future. So presented we're presenting right now, you can see that the rates that have been recommended are lower. We recommended a 5.9, which would mean a $16 million tax abatements. Out of which most of it is the state grants, property tax relief grants, but it also hits 3.4 million of permanent loss of our revenue. As a CSBO, as the financial steward of the district's finances, I have to present all the sustainability scenarios to the district and all the factors that are involved in there. In these options, I'm showing you a rate of 5.8265%. That would be the same tax bill that you would have gotten 2 years ago. For the past 2 years, there has been a tax savings of about $250. With this bill, with this rate, it would be the same tax bill as 2 years ago. The other option is something that has been requested, is the 5.5. It is not something that I would recommend, but it is something that has been shared where the tax bill would be at zero or at minimum for the taxpayers. And if you're looking over kind of a breakdown, this would show that how much would be for two particular home values, a medium home value of $247,000 and a medium home value of $375,000. Of course, what's happening with the district boundaries is this incredible industrial growth. We're seeing Meta, Amazon, Worley, Syngenta. We're seeing many industries coming in and coming to the district. Not everything has gone into the tax rolls yet. We'll be seeing a much bigger growth in future years, and we're also seeing that a lot from Amazon to asking for a reassessment to Worley, we're seeing all these industries coming in, settling in, but also looking for tax appeals. On the next one, this is something I just shared because these are numbers that are confirmed. This is from 22, so these are not current numbers. It's not showing the projected growth, explosive growth that is happening in our industries, but it kind of gives an idea of something like Ferrara Candy of about, we're collecting about $900,000 from what their assessment is. We have received from Meta about $2.4 million, but they have not yet been fully, they're coming fully into the E zone this year in the tax rolls, and that's where the tax abatements hit for them as well. It is no surprise, our fixed costs have gone up. CPI is much higher than what we can capture. We can capture 5%, but we've seen that our services, materials, providing instructional supplies have gone up for more than 10% for the past 2 years. And we are under PTEL law. Other taxing bodies do not have to be capped at 5%. That capping is the importance when you make the decision of the tax rate. We would like to smoothen it between years instead of being boxed in and capped at our rate that we capped at the rate that we will share this year. So notice transportation is going up 20%, food services 10%, energy 7.3%. All of these are rates that we cannot capture because of this law. We are capped at 5%, however, the rest we have to absorb anyway from our abatements, from our fund balance, and that's where the next slide comes in. Our fund balance is very healthy. It is very common for a school district our size, as you can see with our peers, to be at that 54.47%. It's important to note that the fund balance is our savings account. It's for times of any disruption in our funding, because we rely so much on taxpayers' funding from state, federal, and local funds. We have to have a savings in case there's a disruption. So right now, with a 54% fund balance, we can run our schools 6 months out of the whole year. So just on our savings. So the fund balance policy was proposed at the Finance Committee to keep our bond rating high. And that's where a lot of, to get a borrowing rate at a lower amount, we have to have a very healthy fund balance. And our policy has afforded us to restructure debt, which is in turn translated to taxpayer savings. And we have been able to finance that at much lower borrowing rate than other peers. Additionally, ISB's financial score is reliant on this fund balance. So one reason why we are one of the recognized school districts on financing is due to our good stewardship from the years. Moving on to, there's other factors that we take into account when we provide that tax levy request. It's the impact of sunsetting federal revenue sources. So we all are aware that COVID relief grants were a good stream of money for the district, and we used it as a one-time use of funds. We've upgraded facilities, roofs, HVACs, new classrooms. We have 12 buildings which are kind of aging. So we have to provide these type of upgrades that were part of a 5-year plan. We were able to do it, not all of it, of course, but we were able to take into account by being funded by the COVID money. This is coming out. This is leaving us as September 24th. It expires, and we are at about 6.2 million loss that we will not recover on the next year. Title grants are also something that is being discussed. We rely on this on about 2.4 million. This is helping for students that are at risk of failing. If this title grants are expiring as well, this means that it will have to shift to state and local funds. And probably one of the most important state funding consideration is us moving to Tier 2. Now recall, we were 58% financially adequate. What that means is we were doing a lot more with very little resources, and it was driving this district and its fund balances. But now with the new funding formula from the state, we were able to provide financial assistance from the state, ranging from 1.4 million to 4.2 million, in addition to property tax relief grants. However, now we're moving to a different bucket. This will show us and push the district to burn through their savings account for any initiatives in the future. we want to remind everyone what the budget dollars do. This is what they support. We are here for services for students. We are here to provide support to students, and this money, out of 79%, are directly supporting students. So we're coming, so again, this conversation is to have that discussion about the tax levy and what rate, and its ability to meet our obligation and future sustainability. I can have this time for any questions, or I can answer.
So can we go back to the operating budget scenarios, slide number 4? Why do we have an asterisk that it was approved at the meeting? It was just approved to be published. So I think that's misleading, and people need to know that it was not approved. It was
The
approved to be
request.
published.
Right, I think the request was, do you wanna?
Yeah, my name is Steve Richards, and for those of you who don't know me, and I do really want to compliment the public commenters.
Steve, we do need you to come.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm Steve Richard. I work with the law firm. We serve the district. It's really great to be here. I actually think this is my first board meeting that I've been to actually out here. But what an amazing, set of public comments. I just really want to compliment everybody in the room on the level of, your intelligence and well thought out comments. Overall, this is a really high level discussion and a credit to the district for having this special meeting in the first place, to have the discussion. And so, so my understanding was that at the last meeting, at the November 14th meeting, the board voted 3-2 with 2 abstentions in favor of publishing, a black box notice, as it's called, which is this legally required notice that would have, I think for the corporate and special purpose property taxes that we're estimating to be levied, this year, it would have like a number that resulted in basically a 35% reported increase. That was the draft that you guys saw. After that draft, my recommendation, from a legal standpoint, is to, revise the numbers from last year on that black box notice. This is a notice that's just required by law.
Right,
It's
that's why,
called-
Steve, I was
right.
saying, not to
Yes.
interrupt you, it was just approved to be published. It was
Yes,
not approved
absolutely.
as the final go-ahead.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's why I wanna make it clear, because on the PowerPoint,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
it's showing approved at the last meeting. It wasn't approved, it was approved to be published.
It was approved as
To
an
give a
estimate
notification to the public that this may
Right,
be how we are proceeding.
Yes,
But we
yes.
did not give a final stamp on this number.
Okay, okay.
That's, if I'm
Yeah.
looking at the
And-
PowerPoint
of
correctly.
course, and I was
the
not at the
asterisk-
meeting, so I can't,
Yeah.
attest to the full scope of that discussion, but I can just say that, yes, it really only had to do with the requirement under the law that
Correct.
the board estimate the property taxes 20 days in advance of adopting the property taxes. And you guys are going this extra step of having this special meeting in addition to discuss this. So I mean, just again, kudos on a very thoughtful process. But yeah, that's correct.
Correct. I just want
We're-
taxpayers to realize
Yeah.
that when they're looking at that, we have not stamped a number.
Right.
We gave a notification that we are required to do by a certain time frame to notify the community, our residents, our taxpayers. But that number is not an approved, we did not approve that number as a board. We
Right.
approved for it to be published.
Right.
Not approved to be moved forward with. So that is misrepresenting it
Yes.
on there.
Correct.
We did not approve that.
I don't-
Approved for it to be published.
I see, so you're just, so you're saying that the star going down, it says approved at this meeting.
It was approved to be
Yeah,
published.
Right, the wording, there's not a whole lot of room in that footnote. It probably would have been clearer to say, approved for publication.
Correct.
Right, right.
Because a lot of people follow up later and watch
Yeah,
online.
okay, sure,
I don't
sure.
want them looking at this and
Yeah.
walking away and feeling like that number was
Thank you.
approved.
No, I'm not,
Yeah.
I'm not doing the gavel for you all, but just, if we could ask to please listen to the questions that are being asked, and if we could please just, keep it quiet so that, the conversations can continue. Thank you.
Sorry, so,
Yes,
and you
and I would
agree,
like
right?
to- Yeah, I agree.
100%, yeah, okay.
It's just
Sorry.
sometimes we have there are technicalities in a sense that we say adopt it when it means that we're submitting it to a county. So when I say approved is the request or the recommendation for the publishing.
Right,
So
and that's
do-
why I just wanted to clarify, because when people do go back and look at this, or anyone sitting here, that was not an approved number.
It's-
It was approved to be published
Yeah.
by our date that we had to notify.
The business term is adapted, so that adapted would have been like final
Right.
submitted to a county, so I apologize for that.
Clarity understood.
Any other questions?
Comments?
Questions, comments?
Guess one of the concerns that I have just looking at this is I feel like on the impact of industrial growth page, I feel like we're talking a lot about, hey, they're trying to get a lower rate, hey, they're trying to do X, Y, Z. And I feel like what we're not focusing on is the fact that we have partial assessments, multiple buildings that still haven't even been constructed. This isn't even accounting for the fact that Kraft Heinz is rolling in. Like, we have hundreds of millions of dollars that is still gonna be on the table next year, will be on the table the year after that. Like, we've got at least 3 to 4 more years just of what's approved right now and more windfalls that's gonna continue. So I just have some back of the napkin math here that I also kind of did. And we're getting around, even if we told them harmless, about $9 million in new revenues with some rounding in whatever direction. My concern from just yes, we have negotiations that are coming up next year, but if you take in negotiations, I ran the numbers on what kind of the monthly payment on the loan would look like, and then just some other things with the teacher salaries, when we cut that 8.5 number into a fourth for the first year, we're only coming in at around $7.9 million in increased costs from what I see is the contract negotiations next year, the loans that we're gonna have to start paying on the 33.8 million, and the increased teacher salaries from this year. So if the numbers I'm doing only shows we're increasing costs around $8 million, we're already gonna be taking $9 million. Why are we requesting even above that when it seems like our increased costs are gonna be covered by still holding them harmless?
Okay, so just maybe to address the first part, I am the chief financial officer. I will provide to you all the scenario, everything that is certain, let's say, everything that is affecting us. So this one kind of shares what is right now. The projections, I have the numbers, projections from the county, but even them, they say, these are projections. We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen 1 year from now or 2 years from now. We don't know how much crafts will be. Let's say they can guess for example, but crafts hasn't. We may not have. They have it, but I cannot provide that information because of the secrecy. When it comes to why between the 9 million and the 11 million, remember we are capped. It's that capping that becomes an issue. So between years, this number right here, the 5.82, that gives us a smooth transition between years. If we cut ourselves or hit or shoot ourselves in the foot, right now we may not be able to, or we will not be able to provide the same relief. Right now, we are abating 16 million from just my recommendation, or 17 million. What is being asked to do the hold harmless will take 21 million out from us. As a financial officer, I cannot tell you that, or I cannot provide that as a recommendation. It's that capping. We box ourselves in. If we say 5.5, the next year I'm at 5.5, 5%, or CPI, which actually right now it looks at 3.25. So we're going to get 3.25 and any new growth. Right, so that's the idea of boxing in. So whenever a financial officer will probably tell you, let's not leave that much money on the table, but let's be a little bit more smoother in our transition between years.
I don't like when we present it as leave that much money on the table, because these are taxpayers that are working hard in our community. And over the last few years struggled in a lot of cases. Even people that are not paying taxes because they're renters, those owners of those buildings are gonna see an increase, so renters are gonna see an increase. So I don't like that term, leaving money on the table, because it's hard work that people are doing to earn that money, and they expect, you know, some
And we're-
appreciation for that.
Sure, and we're lowering the tax rate. Where that increase is coming from is the market value, the assessed value. That is not gonna be, the homeowners or the taxpayers are not gonna be escaping from that market value moving from many years down the road, because their assessment has gone up. The tax rate is going lower, but that's as a financial officer, I want the sustainability and the revenue to be captured at the right amount, so.
I mean, even holding them harmless, we're benefiting from $9 million increase over this year, what we had. That is $9 million we probably wouldn't have if all of this wasn't going on the south side of town. So with that, we need to start being more thoughtful in our spending so that the community is not having to.
Yeah, and we could afford this right now, but as sustainability wise, on that perspective, we have to make sure that we are smoothly transitioning between years and the abatements we can afford. So again, I'm just presenting the information, the decision will rest with the board.
What would be some of the ramifications that we would see if we do this right now, and what would be like for future? Obviously, we still don't have final numbers on the EAV, I apologize. So what are some of the things that we can consider looking at if we were to do this year, and we realize, hey, we cannot sustain this long term? What can our taxpayers see?
Sure. So two things there. It's the capping, right? So the cap, we are capped. If we are abating this much money, it's a foregone for us. It's a permanent reduction. We can never recapture it in the future. So that is something that I advise against. And really, it's that recapture growth. If we're getting new growth, new construction coming in, they're entering in our tax rolls. That's in January, February, March. We want to capture that. Otherwise, we'll be missing out the opportunity for those that growth coming into the tax rolls. We'll be missing out from capturing those taxes. So that is something that I would advise against.
Okay, so just to be clear, even if we were to under levy, that does not mean that taxpayers are not going to see an increase to their tax bills.
So between January and March, there will be a lot of appeals, the assessments. There will be, the county will do an extension. So if we are going over, they are going to reevaluate the AV, yes, all the new numbers, and then give us the actual tax rate at that time.
And do we have a prediction of where we are going to be at right now, based on your conversations with the county assessors?
Yes, we have had conversations with the county assessors. There's a lot of appeals. This is a quadriennial that they call it, and basically every 3 or 4 years there is a full assessment of each property, and we are on it. And a lot of appeals are happening right now.
I guess something I kind of want to iterate in response to that. The numbers aren't a known fact, but I think we know the assessor's not going to show up to Worley and say, yeah, your value is worth half. Like, the numbers are going to change a little bit. It's kind of like, the sun's going to rise every morning. We know the sun is going to rise every morning. It might be 5:46, it might be 6:30, but we have a pretty good idea that it's going to happen. We know that they're gonna go out, they're gonna collect property taxes every year. So let's just say we as a board, maybe we go for that 5.52% and we miss the mark and it turns out we're in the red for next year. Next year, we're gonna go through the exact same process where we as a board can figure out, all right, how do we need to reassess and rework this to make sure that we're paying things? You mentioned yourself, we have over $70 million in the bank right now. Even if we miss the mark, we're not gonna drain that entire budget, missing the mark 1 year. And we have new growth that we can count on coming onto the books next year as well. And it's 20 years away, but all of these things we're getting from the E-zones right now are gonna double in 20 years. So I guess the money is going to be there. I guess the way I'm concerned is I feel like we're positing this like we're not gonna be able to pay the bills. The lights will stay on in the district. Our teachers will continue to get payroll, even if we take the 5.52%. We're not gonna leave the district destitute by protecting the taxpayers this year.
So if we do that for 1 year. So if our taxpayers when we do this for our taxpayers this year, and then we realize that we are in the red, would that mean that they will take a greater hit next year? Or I guess I'm just trying to make sure that we are clear about that. That if we were to do that this year, what does that mean for the sustainability long term? And after we realize, if we were to realize, obviously the goal is never to be in that situation, right? But if we were to realize that, what would that mean? What would the effect be for that? And I know one of our other attorneys is here.
I'm Scott Nemenick, I do your tax appeals. Bottom line is just, this as you said, I don't know if you would end up in the red. I mean, this is up to how this board handles your finances, okay? But in a very worst case scenario, remember what, Armia has said earlier. You're a PTO district, okay? As such, next year, you'd still be limited to 5%, okay? Or CPI, whichever is less. So that would be it. Plus new growth. Now, as your one board member has commented, there's still a lot more new growth on the way, and I think you commented there's still a lot more new growth on the way. So that may ameliorate the whole issue. But until that happens, I mean, we've heard, yes, this one's coming, that one's coming. I asked the other day with the county officials, when is Kraft coming? They weren't sure, but they thought perhaps another year Kraft will be here, and it may be next year, but it's still speculation till it's finalized, all right? But I would think, everything I'm hearing, and with the huge development on the south side, yes, you will have more new growth. So you would have to be counting on that, plus the PTEL limitations to cover if you had any sort of deficit situation.
Did you introduce yourself? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I did.
Okay,
Scott,
yeah.
Can I share my thoughts? One of the things that I had the wonderful opportunity to do is teach in this district. And when I was a teacher, there was a few times actually where during rainstorms, the water would come into my classroom, which showed that, our buildings needed a little repair. But what I noticed was our kids didn't really care. It didn't affect their ability to learn. It didn't affect them in any way whatsoever because they had a caring person in front of the room who could get them interested in what I was teaching them. I mean, it was easy because it was science and Bill Nye was awesome. But one of the greatest things about this community is that we have the one barb. And if you're unfamiliar with it, it's always been a thing at the high school where there's a lot of different mascots out there. There's I think the numbers are made up, we'd have to check. But there's a lot of Spartans, there's a lot of this and that. But there's only one barb out there. And I think I was the cheesy guy in elections who said the one word I was running on was love. But I really think that we are one barb, and that when our community shows up in support or opposed to something, that really means a lot for those of us who have been elected. And with that, I'd like to ask the rest of the board and our administration to hold the taxpayers harmless.
Would it be appropriate from a logistical standpoint to ask us to get consensus on the board for going for the 5.52% to hold taxpayers harmless?
AC.
We can do that if that's where we are at. I just wanna make sure that, again, that we understand what that means.
You need to see that, do you need to see the board?
You can do a consensus, but you can't do a formal vote.
Yeah.
Correct.
Right, down under here.
Correct.
Down under the law. Wait till next meeting.
Okay. So, with that said, do we have consensus to bring this back to the board with the 5.52%? Is that where we are at?
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
And can I ask for some clarification? And probably Armir was gonna say the same thing. Oh, great. Okay, so at the next meeting, the Board of Education is gonna vote to approve the certificate of tax levy, right? That's one piece, okay? And then at a later meeting, the board is going to, do these abatements, right? And the abatements, right, don't actually reduce your future levy capacity. That's this amazing thing about the State of Illinois Property Tax Relief Grant Program, right? So what you adopt at your next meeting, can be what is published in that black box, right? As this certificate of tax levy. And then at the next meeting, you can decide, now, how much are we gonna abate? And get it down to whatever percentage level you want, okay? And why should you do that? And why would I recommend you do that? It's because if you adopt the levy at the higher, amount initially, you're less likely to prejudice the district going forward in terms of that PTEL cap, which protects the taxpayers but limits your overall revenue increases. And this is a district that, we've heard a lot of comments, about, not difficult, maybe student population or not, the test scores not being, the highest, right? So we've heard that. Those are the types of districts, the state of Illinois, in coming up with this evidence-based funding formula. Those are the types of considerations that actually factor into, well, what is that adequacy target? Adequacy is different for a district that has a more needy student population. That's, so you guys are at like 84%, according to the state. Okay, so it doesn't matter that maybe there's some other districts that can do it cheaper. I was talking to a superintendent last week who's kind of new at his new district. And his new district is funded almost entirely by property taxes. His last one was funded almost entirely by state funding. And his last district spent an incredibly higher amount per student. But what was the difference? He moved into a place that was wealthy. It's when you're in a wealthy area, property taxes are gonna be a very high portion of your funding. And the kids, he just said, this job is so easy compared to my last one. The kids are so nice. I've never had to do an expulsion. I've never had to, that is what the superintendent says. So it makes a difference, right? So it's not really apples to apples to say one school district spends X dollars per kid and the other doesn't. Anyway, my point is, you can separate those two things, like you're adopting a levy at your December meeting, the certificate of tax levy that gets filed with the county clerk, and if that is lower than what you could adopt, you're gonna lose that money not just for this year, but for every future year, right? You're gonna, because next year's extension base that they start from becomes lower, right? And I heard from a commenter earlier, today, it is true, the Board of Education has a duty under the school code, right, to provide revenue to fund the schools. Also has a duty in the oath, to protect school district assets, right? Be a faithful protector of the school district's assets. And you also consider the taxpayers, and it sounds like the taxpayers are maybe on the winning side, I don't know, we haven't heard from everybody. But bottom line, there's a difference between what you adopt this month, like in December, and that number can be what was in the black box, and then you can just basically approve larger abatements later to get to that percentage number that you're looking at. And if you do it that way, then you don't prejudice the district's ability going forward in future years, how much money, and you really limit that to a 1 year. So
So what you're saying is
Yeah.
basically that if we were to go with the recommendation of the 5.9, it's just as a listed price, but then ultimately the abatements can come back and still drop it to that 5.52 as a recommendation for the abatements, not necessarily the actual permanent levy.
right.
I don't feel that what you're advising though is going towards the spirit of what the board members here that are going for the lower amount are. I think the argument you're going for, which I absolutely understand, because we are in a way binding future boards for the rest of history with this decision. But we can also say Kraft is coming, Amazon's coming, all these people are coming. They're not looking at how much the school district is choosing to abate after the fact. They're looking at what is the percentage on paper that they filed with the county they're gonna charge us when they choose to come here.
That's
And-
not what they look at. No, they look at the
Our city
percentage of the
manager
tax
is here
bill.
right now. What would you say, working with the businesses that come to town, are they looking at?
What I'm saying is,
As
if
our
you're
legal
looking for a
counsel.
percentage, if
Just
you're
a
looking for
second,
5.52, yeah.
Could we let Bill answer the question, please?
Bill, who is Bill?
Bill,
That's our city manager.
City manager
The
of DeKalb.
city manager?
yes.
Yeah, I mean.
So could you
are
give us, Chris just asked him a question. I'd like him to answer.
Please do.
The question, I'm sorry. if you could-
Chris.
So the question I'm asking with the businesses that you have helped spearhead to bring to this community, are they looking at how much we're abating, or are they looking at this is the percentage they say they're gonna charge me?
They wanna know what our tax rate is, our aggregate tax rate is. If you wanna talk about taxes specifically, they're interested in a lot of other things. They're interested in location, access, the many parts of the community that we're happy to talk about. But when it comes to taxation, one of the top 5 things, universally, up until today, they feel that our aggregate rate is too high. Which is why they ask for 50% abatement, or 55 in the case of Meta. But I can tell you, they are producing enormously. I was at the county today with the superintendent and our mayor. I met with the county administrator and the chief county assessment officer. May I? And this is not information that is just in my pocket. Superintendent knows about it, and so does our mayor. Now, these projections, as you've all been saying, you know, we don't know the final EAV numbers. What we do know is after abatement, Meta will be generating somewhere between $130 and $140 million new wealth in EAV. Next year, it will more than double. So you're concerned about what's going to happen, about a bad year, a bad guess. It can't happen because those buildings are not planned. Building 3, which is not yet on the assessment books, is the one that will jump, and it's ready to be occupied. It'll be occupied sometime early in the next year. So, what you should be worrying about is not what you might lose. There isn't any loss here. What you should be worrying about strategically is what you should be doing, working with us, working with the other taxing bodies, working with your residents, to talk about priorities and what you can do with this newfound wealth.
Thank you.
So I don't think that you guys understood what I was saying. I wasn't saying anything different than what he said. I was truly not saying anything different from what he was saying. He said what the businesses look at is that rate at the end, this 5.52, right? And I think that's what we heard from most people, right? So, to get to that rate, are there not 2 ways you can get there? One way would be to adopt a lower certificate of tax levy, you know, and then abate less afterwards. The other way to get there would be to adopt a higher certificate of tax levy and then abate more afterwards. in the end, you get to the same percentage.
Let's do the first
And
one.
I'm saying that it's actually the second one that legally makes the most, sense, but it is definitely the board's decision. I'm not gonna be an eighth board member, that's not my role. But I just wanna make it clear what I'm trying to explain, so does that make sense?
It is clear, it is clear, yes.
And one of the things that I also wanna make sure that somebody mentioned earlier in one of the comments was in regards to the new infrastructure that is coming in. We know that the infrastructure is coming in, and we know that obviously that is also costing for our properties to be assessed at a larger value, right? And
No, it isn't.
No, that's not right.
Nope, doesn't work that way.
when your property value is assessed at a higher rate, what does that mean for the taxpayer?
Ma'am, just so you know, the trailing average of 3 years.
I'm asking our attorney, so what does that mean?
That's out of order, right? We're out of public comment. This is not a town hall meeting. It's your board. You guys are the decision makers now.
Thank you.
And this is not a public hearing either, right?
So normally, what is that, that's probably a Scott question, right? Normally, what happens with that? When there's new investment and their property values are increased at a higher rate, what does that mean for the taxpayers?
Well, obviously, it's gonna depend on ultimately the levies, but remember, as was said earlier, you're a quadrennial. Every county in the state, except Cook County, has quadrennial reassessments. And that's probably what set off a lot of people this year, because they got, their proposed assessments that, whoa, we're going up here, what's going on, okay? And the township assessor does his job dutifully, he goes ahead, he takes a look at the sales tax ratio, and reassesses everybody based on that. It's not supposed to necessarily be based upon what's happening down with corporations or industries, it's the sales tax ratio of properties, but that's what he does, okay? And once they go up, now it's a matter of, okay, do we wanna pay more taxes? And obviously, you've heard tonight from citizens who've come forward to speak to you, saying they have, a difficult time with the idea of seeing a levy increase, which means their tax rate will go up. They're hoping that you can do something to ameliorate the fact that their assessments went up, okay?
Thank you. All right. Any other questions, comments from the board? From the board, anybody, any comments from the board? No comments from the board? All right, so with that said, we would do a motion then to close this meeting. So I've had to bring
Consensus. We already did
consensus yes, we did consensus, Jackie, right? You got that? Yeah, okay. All right, so let me read that. Okay, so with that, we would do, the meeting will, it is now 7:18, and with that, the meeting will adjourn. Is there a motion?
Second.
Steve?
So moved, Steve did.
It's already on the schedule.
I said second.
Oh, and second for Amanda. Roll call, please.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, good night.